Hello, Canucks fans, and welcome back to another episode of the Canucks Conversation, brought to you by the great folks over at Zephyr Epic. You can use promo code Hockey Season, capital H, capital S. Wow, that took me a second. All one word, Hockey Season. That will get you $5 off your order at Zephyr Epic. That is Zephyr Epic. Check them out on all platforms: Facebook, Twitter, Twitch, Instagram, whatever platform you want. Zephyr Epic is probably on it, and they're probably giving you all of your sports cards needs. They got fun stuff for kids too, like coloring pages and stuff like that. So go check out ZephyrEpic.com. Also have a retail location in Surrey, but if you choose to shop online, free shipping Canada-wide on any order over $50. It's been a while, Chris. My name is David Quadrelli. I'm joined as always by the man who built the place, Chris Faber. Our technical producer is Aaron Bordato. I'm back from vacation.
What's this about coloring books? You have coloring books at Zephyr?
No, I didn't say books. I said pages. They got stuff you can print. Did you never do one of those? Like you got a coloring page printed off from like pbs.com or whatever?
No, I don't think I've ever done that. I'm not a big coloring guy. My fiance, I got her a book of like learning how to doodle, and it's like a 6-step thing about drawing a lot of like little pieces or whatever. And yesterday I drew a beaver for the first time. That was pretty cool.
Do you have it? Like, can you show the listeners?
No, I don't want to. It wasn't that good, so I don't want to do that. But yeah, no, you had your whole vacation week. Talk us through. What was your 1 week of vacation like? You were straight 7 days, no work.
Well, first off, we have to give a shout out, and I know you agree with this. We don't plan the show, but I wanted to get this out of the way quick. Joey Pitt and Laura from Canucks Twitter, Twitter power couple, they just got engaged during my vacation, which was awesome. I think it's Sunday. Congratulations to Joey and Laura. Obviously, Joey's our pal. Laura as well. Laura's been to
Joey's
some
in the
Canucks
chat
Army
right now.
events.
Hello, Joey. Congratulations to you too. That's it was pretty awesome. My fiance saw that tweet within like 30 seconds of it being up. So I I feel like I was one of the first people to know. That was awesome. So congrats to those two. Really awesome to see young love, right? Quad's young love.
That's right, and that means we're gonna have a set of fiancés at the next Canucks Army event, which we're gonna be having in. I think the first one we're talking about a few different things right now, but I think we're gonna do kind of a season kickoff thing. We'll see what comes of that, but we're hopeful. We're hopeful that we can do something quick. But yes, of course, congratulations to Joey and Laura. Okay, now I'm gonna make this about me. You asked how my vacation was. Chris, it was awesome. I showed you my screen time thing. I spent like 8 minutes on Twitter on my whole vacation. I cooked some stuff. It was a really, really good time. I ordered a Lego set, but it did not get to my house until Monday. My first day back at work was when my Lego set got here. So now I'm slowly building that. I'm not going to be able to finish it the way I hope to, but it was awesome, man. It was so much fun. I loved not working, but I'm back in now, back in the saddle. And honestly, like, I'm feeling pretty excited about the season. And this isn't just because of the Canucks offseason or anything like that, but just with what we have planned at Canucks Army and what we're going to do. Like last year was our first year with Wyatt. Last year was our first year doing the show. There was a lot of changes last year, and it kind of felt like it all happened really quickly. But now we have a year under our belt doing all this other stuff that we do now. And I'm very excited. Like I think it's going to be a really fun year. I'm excited to be doing the show 5 days a week again with you. It's going to be a lot of fun. It's going to be a hell of a season. I don't even know what else to say. It was like vacation kind of made me like I didn't miss work. Don't get me wrong. I'm not trying to say I missed work, but like I got back and I'm excited. Like I'm really excited about this season.
That's like from an employer's perspective. What else could they ask for from a vacation? That they give you the week vacation, and now you just want to work. You want to work and work and work. I feel like it was like the week that you took for vacation, which was last week, felt to me a little bit like we're at the top of the mountain. We're at the top of the mountain of like grinding through the off season. So now it's kind of just like, well, training camp's now a month away. Young Stars is just around the corner in a few weeks here up in Penticton. So like everything's starting to kind of glide into the season. And the fact that like NFL football started, like the preseason started, that to me was like, oh, hey, fall sports season is coming. And we all love fall sports season, obviously. So yeah, it was we're at a good point right now. And yeah, I think the Pius, I'm working on it. Pius Suter Signing is definitely something to get excited about. It's something that you missed last week because you were on vacation, as we mentioned. But maybe we'll just get your thoughts on it, because Harm and I spent a lot of time. We had a ton of people in the YouTube chat last week as well, because it was like an hour after the signing when we did the show. So that was perfect timing. I'm glad we didn't do the show on Thursday. But we haven't gotten your thoughts on it yet. Quads, Pius Suter. What do you think? $1.6 million, 2-year deal. Kind of looks like he's slotting into 3C, but what's your take on the signing here now that we've had some time to kind of let it sink in a little bit?
So my first thought, I was at the zoo when the signing broke, and I got a text from a friend, which I'm sure you can relate to. Text from a friend saying, "Hey, what do you think of the signing?" I'm like, "I don't know what signing you're talking about. I have all my notifications muted. I haven't seen anything. I'm looking at a giraffe right now." Pius Suter, or Pius, whatever it is. We're gonna work on that.
We'll work
I
on it.
really liked the signing because obviously I got home and I had to look it up, right? Like I had to go look a little bit more. This is a guy that we have been talking about, maybe not on the show so much, but he's been referenced on Canucks Army a lot of times. I think Noah Strang talked about him. I think Stéphane Roger has also written about him as like a smart, preferably cheap signing for the Canucks. But I think even those guys, when they wrote about him, were talking about him being kind of a, $2 or $3 million at 2 years. The fact they got him at 1.6 for 2 years is really, really good. And we know what the market has kind of corrected itself with the flat cap era to being, not really a favorable spot if you're a bottom 6 forward, right? Like Tyler Mott still doesn't have a contract, right? And that's an unfortunate case because we go back to it and Tyler Mott basically talked extension with the Canucks. It didn't work out. Tyler Mott thought he could get more in the open market, or I should say the agent, right? It wasn't obviously Tyler Mott himself, but their camp thought they could get more in the open market, so the Canucks move him. He's not able to get more in the open market. Goes for the 1-year show me deal in Ottawa. Now he's kind of in that mushy middle where, like, are we going to see Tyler Mott on a PTO? Like, were we close to seeing a guy like Pius Suter on a PTO? Like were we close to that? Because we saw the report from Rick Dollywall that, a lot of teams were talking to Suter about it being 1 year, but then the Canucks apparently were the first to kind of go to 2 years, and that made it an easy decision for Suter. It seems like him and his camp were kind of holding out for that second year, and that since the Canucks were willing to give that, that's what made them actually pull the trigger on signing with the Canucks. Now, look, this is their first move in the month of August since 2015. I've talked about that. Adam Cracknell was their last one. And I'm kind of going all over the map here as I tend to do, jumping right back into the saddle. But the signing itself, what it signals to me, Chris, is that the Canucks improved their center depth. Their bottom 6 forward group is improved without really breaking the bank. And what it really signaled to me, and we didn't really, I don't say we badmouthed Teddy Bluger, but we kind of alluded to the idea that, he's penciled into the 3C role, but like he was like a 4th line winger, sometimes center on the Vegas Golden Knights. So if you're a team that's trying to compete and you're a team that's really trying to make the playoffs once again, as the Canucks have made it clear they are, you don't really go into the season and say, yes, Teddy Bluger is for sure our 3C. And now I know they're hoping for Nils Amon to take a step and all those other variables, but for the most part, that's what the Bluger signing was okay, we have our 3C, we have our guy. But now it gives them some options, right? And I don't think many would disagree that Suter is a better option than Bluger as the 3C, and you're much better off if you've got Bluger as your 4C, and not to mention what happens if there's an injury to any center on this roster, right? About what kind of shape you're in pre-Suter signing, and now what you're looking at after the signing of Pius Suter.
Yeah, he's an example of, you see good teams do this every year where they sign a player in August or September even, and we see it sometimes like right before the season, and they get him at below market value from July 1st, and they're very effective for that money. This is where you find value in free agency. You don't find it on July 1st. I'm sorry, it doesn't happen that way. You might find a good player on July 1st, but I don't think you're ever getting value from that type of player really on July 1st. Like, maybe there's some rare occasions where a big free agent on July 1st hits for you, but these guys, I feel like there's a lot more of a success rate for the value that you pay in August, September, these type of deals. And that's what I look like with Pius Suter. Like, the Canucks waited. It took a 2-year deal to get done, like you mentioned, but this feels like a contract where it's kind of like we said with all the other deals that were signed on July 1st by Patrick Allvin, but like this money makes sense. This contract makes sense. The where he's going to play in the lineup makes sense. And I don't think we've seen enough of that in the past few years for the Vancouver Canucks. So from your perspective of Suter, what's the best thing he brings on ice? Because we've touched on the contract, we've touched on a few things like that. But on ice, what are you expecting now? Because you've been back to editing articles now. You might have missed the Suter hype as we had articles all weekend long on Canucks Army, but I'm sure you've caught up a little bit and done some research of your own. What do you see him actually doing on the ice next season?
Well, I always like to do my own research. So with Suter, obviously, there's the penalty killing aspect. And that's something that's just in line with what we've seen the Canucks do with every free agent that they have targeted this offseason. Obviously, there's the defending, all that sort of stuff. But what I really like about Suter is that when you look at him as a 3C, especially in comparison to Bluger, and I know Stefan did this exercise himself, but that's the big thing I see with Suter is that there's just more offensive upside. And he's still only 27 years old. I know Bluger's only a year older at 28, but there was really no offense that comes with Bluger. And that's fine. He's a very solid defensive center, and this team there's definitely a place on this team for that. But with Suter, you're seeing more offensive upside. What can Suter do if he's playing with a Connor Garland on his wing, right? Like, a talented 5-on-5 offensive contributor. Don't tell JD Burke I said that, but a talented 5-on-5 offensive contributor who has been playing with guys like Sheldon Dries, right? Like Connor Garland hasn't really had that steady center, and I wonder what the third line kind of looks like and who his wingers turn out being. And I know you did something on CanucksArmy.com about the line combinations that we might see, but with Suter, I just see some offensive upside. And I think if you're a Canucks fan, you have to be super happy about that, especially if you're looking at what this team's projected lineup was before they signed Suter and their overall center depth as well, right? And then after they signed Suter, how much those things change, even with what looks like a pretty insignificant signing. Like you brought up the cap hit. This guy could be buried in the minors and you only have 400, 500,000 on your salary cap if he needs to go down to the minors in the second year, right? Like there's a ton of reasons to like this deal. And the longer we talk about it, I think the more you're just going to like it. But the one thing that I got curious about, because I was talking about the signing itself and I was trying to catch up, and I wrote something, 1,500 words on Canucks Army. It went up about a half hour ago, I'd say. Just finished it this morning. But I was looking at the Canucks offseason as a whole, and I had someone say to me, like, hey, when's the last time the Canucks had this good of an offseason? So I went back and looked at all of the recent off seasons that they've had. I went back to 2014 because I kind of deduced that was the last time they had a very good off season, right? They signed Verbata, they signed Ryan Miller. Those two signings worked out for the most part with what that team was trying to accomplish. Yes, they should have rebuilt. I mentioned that in the article. But anyways, my point being that you don't really see a lot of people saying, oh, I don't like these signings for the Canucks. Like, yes, there are people out there, and maybe they're right, that are saying, I disagree with the Canucks belief that Carson Soucy and Ian Cole, Soucy especially, can both be top four contributors top four defensemen regularly. Like Soucy's never played more than a bottom pairing role up to this point in his career, and they threw 3 years at him, right? So there are people who are looking at Soucy and saying, okay, well, maybe this bet won't work out. But for the most part, these were low risk, potentially high upside bets that the Canucks made, and they addressed their biggest concern in penalty killing, and they did not pay a premium to do this. I've said this on past shows, Chris. You look at the names that were out there, they didn't go out and sign Ryan O'Reilly. They go the cheaper route, and I think that's what a lot of Canucks fans wanted to see. So I went back and looked at the last time they even did anything remotely close to that, and I think you can argue that there's some comparables there with the Radim Verbata signing, where they only go 2 years, $5 million annually, rather than more additional years on that contract. So I went back and looked at all that. Articles up at CanucksArmy.com. But I just kind of looked at their moves as a whole, and I said, the 2022 offseason, pretty good. Didn't amount to much, but they didn't take any shortcuts, really. Like the shortcut, I guess, and I don't know if we'll call it a shortcut in 6 months, right? Was trading for Filip Hronek, right? We all thought they were going into this rebuild. They made it clear they're just making a retool, and they just want to do it their way, which, hey, it might work out. But for the most part, their off season, there was no signings that you were like, oh, I can't believe they did this, or no trades that you were like, wow, I can't believe they did this. And look, Hronek's a good defenseman, right? Like that's the thing that it comes down to is he's going to help this team. And now let's just see if the pieces they've kind of sprinkled in around it is going to be able to get them over the hump.
Yeah, and I thought about that a little bit today, where it was like, what is the biggest need that needed to be addressed on the roster? And we've talked about it for years. In my eyes, it was Quinn Hughes' partner, right? Like that is to me the thing that you need. You need a top pairing that you're feeling confident in. And with Susie and Cole, I don't know. I don't know if either of them is the right answer there. I mean, they draft Tom Höglander this offseason, so you have to give them credit there. Okay, they're making an investment here because listen, they could have gone out. They could have got a big name forward, right? Zach Benson was right there. They could have got Zach Benson. They made an investment to, in my eyes, draft Quinn Hughes' partner of the future. And right now they've brought in some guys who can kind of patchwork their way through. Like, Noah Juleson can play games with Quinn Hughes. Ian Cole can play games with Quinn Hughes. I guess like Hronek's going to play some time with him at 5-on-5 when they're trailing in games. That type of situation while you're waiting for Höglander to develop into that role. So the other big one that they wanted to, and this is one that they verbally talked to us about one of the big needs that they wanted to fill out. This is from Patrick Alvin, like 3C. They did need a 3C, and I like that they're getting value from the signing for a 3C too. Like I find that Pius Suter is going to bring value in that role. And I just had to look it up here real quick because I should have known this, but I just wanted to double check. But like no trade protection either. So if things aren't working out, somebody's going to trade you a pick for Pius Suter. That's the thing that you can look at with contracts. And it's like, listen, we're Canucks. We follow the Canucks. There's a lot of Canucks fans listening to this show. We know that things can go south very quick here in this market for this team specifically, the way that they're run. And if you do have to start selling off guys, like, hey, you can probably sell Ian Cole off at, retain half, sell him off. He's on a 1-year deal. You can now sell off Pius Suter if you need to. And these are if things actually go, negatively, which is, listen, very possible. We've seen it happen year after year here for Vancouver Canucks fans. But I think, and like Canucks Vid says here, I'm cautiously optimistic for the upcoming season to make the playoffs. To my own detriment, maybe. Yeah, I think that comment there on the YouTube here is how a big majority of Canucks fans are feeling right now. At least the sense that I'm getting from social media anyways is there's a lot of optimism going around, but I don't see a lot of Canucks fans being like 100% playoff team. Like it is a very cautious optimism that's out there right now with Canucks fans, but I think it's fair because the offseason has been, in my eyes, a very good offseason. We had to give our letter grades on the Canucks Army Roundtable. I picked A-. I think it's been a pretty good offseason for them. I could bump it up to an A or an A+ if they were able to move away from the Myers money, really. Like what else could you have asked for this year? OEL's not coming back to play on the roster next year. Yeah, you had to buy him out. That's going to hurt you in a couple of years for sure, but he might have hurt you more being on this roster and playing games next year at this cap hit. So I look at the whole offseason as a whole. I think, man, there should be optimism about the Canucks. That's how I'm feeling about the team anyways. But like Canucks Vid said on the YouTube chat, you have to be cautiously optimistic here.
I think even the uber positive Canucks fans have just had the passion beat out of them to some extent because look, like I've been on Reddit more lately. I'm a member of the Canucks Reddit now. I got my account there. People are very nice to me on Reddit now. But there was like a post on there. No disrespect to the original poster of the post, but they basically said like, all these analytic models have us finishing, kind of just below the playoff bar. I think people are seriously underrating us. And like all the replies are like, we've been saying this for the past 11 years. Like we've been saying this every single year for the past number of years. And it's never really turned out the way that we expect. So you have to be cautiously optimistic. And my point being here, Chris, is that I don't think this idea of being cautiously optimistic is just something from Canucks Vid or something that we're saying. I think that's the overwhelming feeling among Canucks fans right now is I've seen this song and dance before. I'm going to wait and make sure the team actually proves it on the ice. Because that's the thing is like, you saw it kind of under Tocchet make the switch, right? And one thing I'm really curious to talk to players about, especially at like training camp and stuff, because JT Miller had that podcast appearance last week. I think it was Cam and Strick podcast, where he talked about how he believes in the team and that sort of stuff and why he signed long-term in Vancouver and all that. And one thing that really piqued my interest was how he talked about, it didn't feel right before. Like things weren't feeling good. It was a gong show of a season. He used a different word, but it was a gong show of a season. And when Tocchet came in, things just kind of started sharpening up a little bit. Things started to make a little more sense, is what it sounded like. So I'm curious with if you go back and listen to how things sounded when Bruce was first hired, when Bruce Boudreau first took over for Travis Green, sounded similar to Tocchet, but it seems like there's just more belief in Tocchet from the players. So, or what they were able to do under Tocchet. And I'm just curious what it really comes down to for the players. How different it actually feels heading into this upcoming season, because for fans, like, it doesn't feel too different. I think fans are basically in the same spot they were last year, where they were cautiously optimistic. Yeah, the Boudreaux bump was great, but let's not put the cart before the horse, right? I think that's where fans were last year, and I think that once again, that's where they are this year, and that is not the consumer's fault. That is the product's fault, because it's hurt the consumer so many times that this is where they're at. As Canucks fans, that is where they are at right now, is they need to see it to believe it. Now we're hopeful. We're hopeful that we finally get some playoff hockey to cover, because, man, remember the bubble? We had so much fun with the bubble. We weren't in the bubble, obviously, but the podcasts we were doing, it was fun. It was fun to watch the Canucks compete in the playoffs. So hopefully they have a similar result this year.
Yeah, let's get to a couple of comments. Jeremy says it's best to be humble and underrated. Jimmy Grimmy says really going to depend on chemistry. So many new players to jive with. I understand that, and what I wanted to throw out there, it's like, hey, listen, we're in the off season. We don't have a ton of news. Why don't we have this discussion here today of why would it be different? What are the things that are going to be different? Because I thought the Canucks were a very good team in the closeout to the season with Bruce Boudreau as their coach. I thought they were a good, like a solid team when they were with Rick Tocchet to finish out the season. Is the organization now, let's just, like, honestly, I don't even have like a big discussion point. Let's see if we can come up with points, and you can do this in the chat as well if you're joining us here on YouTube. Like, why is this different? We can obviously start with the coach. Rick Tocchet is different than Bruce Boudreau. It feels like there's a different expectation, I think, in the offseason. Do you got a couple things of why this actually feels different?
They seem to be cheating a little bit less, right? Like, for points, for offense in general, they seem to be playing hashtag the right way a little bit more under Tocchet and his coaching staff. And one thing that we've heard players talk about, Chris, is that there's actual coaching going on. And there wasn't a ton of that under Bruce Boudreau. And hey, like, I don't want this to turn into a Bruce slam fest. This has happened enough in this market when he was still here. So I just want to talk about the fact that, yeah, like, Tocchet, it seems like, has a pretty good grasp on where his players are at, and he has communicated to them where they actually need to be. And it seems like there's just a lot more coaching going on, which that's something we've just heard from the players. It's not really a report or anything like that. That's just something players have said is, yeah, like, with Tocchet, there's a lot more kind of instruction coming down.
Yeah, I think a healthy Demko is another one, right?
Yeah.
We're getting a healthy Demko going into next season. He's critical for success for the Vancouver Canucks.
The second best player in the world, Archer Seelovs, behind only Connor Bedard, according to the IHF.
Yeah, that's good stuff. I think another one might be, listen, Pettersson and Hughes both took a step again last year. Mm-hmm. That's another positive. Those are the two drivers of this team. Another positive I feel would be, and that's a tough one, because is Carson Soucy really a top four? Like, they added a top four defenseman in Phil Peronic. That's a positive there. They added a bottom four guy in Carson Soucy. I think you could call him that. So that's another positive there. That might be something that's a little bit different. But really, like, if you look at compared to going into last year, they don't have Bo Horvat anymore, right? That was he was a very good player for the Vancouver Canucks, specifically last season, scoring goals. So, it's like this muted account said in the chat, new coat of paint on the same car. I think a lot of people will feel like that way, and it's because of what you mentioned of why would the fan base this season believe compared to what they did last year, when it was like I think last year was really hurtful for the fan base because they got like hope and excitement, and all that stuff came back with Bruce Boudreau because it was like fun wins and this exciting coach who gives great quotes in the media, and the players all really listen, if we go back like a year and like if we go back like 14 months or 15 months, we're still in the season. Players really loved Bruce Boudreau. The players
I think they still do.
Yeah, I think you could hear that in the JT Miller conversation. So to think that things are going to be vastly different, I struggle with that being a legitimate possibility. But I can see this being the start of the changes to get you to the organization being vastly different and being held to a higher level of accountability. I think a lot of that starts from the management group. I think a lot of that starts honestly with the ownership and goes down from there and to the management group, then to the coaches, and the coaches are the ones that lay it on to the players. And like you said, yes, I do feel better about the actual coaching that's coming to this team, right? Like I do feel better about that. But what else? Is there anything else that you feel much more confident about this year than last year that we're missing? I'll check in the chat here in a second, unless you have one.
I'd just like to point out that when Tocchet first got here, he spoke about wanting to run 4 lines, wanting to not have Piggy and Hughes playing, NHL leading ice time, which is what they actually ended up doing down the stretch. But we kind of predicted this to some extent. Like we talked about, it's great that he's saying all this. It's great for the tank. But I think at some point he's going to realize that, hey, we're not going to win games if we don't ride these guys super hard with the way that the team is constructed right now. So if we go back to the signings that they made, it frees them up. Like when you add depth and you add depth that you can actually trust, and it's not just let's hope Sheldon Dries works out in this spot, or let's hope this guy from Abbotsford. I'm not trying to pick on Sheldon Dries. I mentioned him twice today, but yeah, I know Sheldon Dries getting targeted in mid-August. But
Sheldon Dries will drop it with any 5'8" guy, so you're in trouble.
Dude,
watch out.
Look, I know I'm not trying. In all honesty, I'm not trying to badmouth Sheldon Dries, but you get what I'm saying, right? Just adding to your depth is going to allow this team to maybe not run all 4 lines evenly. I don't think that's going to happen with the way this team's constructed, but it should allow them to successfully kill penalties without having to put Pettersson or Hughes out there, in turn turning down their ice time even just a little bit. If you want these guys to last over a full 82 game season, Hughes can't be playing close to 30 minutes a night every single night. He's got to have some nights where the load is just taken off him a little bit. And I think with their offseason additions, it's going to allow them to do that, and ultimately going to allow them to play more the way that Tocchet wants them to play. So there's another reason for optimism, I'd say.
Yeah, that's actually another reason, and I can just kind of bounce off of that one. This is like a cousin of your answer here, but the additions do help the top players. And I don't know if you can say that about previous years, about the additions that they've made to really make the top players that much better. Like Mikheyev last offseason, he was a guy who was going to make the top players better. Obviously, he didn't work out with the injury, but at least he's that type. But I can see that, like, from what you said, the job that these top players are going to have to do on a nightly basis when they're playing. It is a little bit easier when some of these other guys can eat up those minutes that, you don't need Quinn Hughes playing 3 minutes a night on the penalty kill. You don't need that. Save him those 3 minutes and let him use those 3 minutes later on in the season, right? Like little things like that. Let's get to a couple of comments. Carlos says bottom 6 might be decent for the first time in a while. Again, it's a might, right? But yeah, Carlos is right. They might be better. Jimmy says, I think the strictness from talk on actual conditioning could be huge for a strong start of the season. Yeah, that's the other thing to me is we're going to know very quickly. We're going to know 12 games into the year, I feel like, if the Canucks are going to be in playoff contention or not. The first 12 games are going to tell you that. And that's why a massive key needs to be put on that. And yeah, I don't know how they do it. I don't know how you can be more prepared. Like, they're professionals, right? I feel like they're prepared for a hockey season. They'll be ready when training camp comes. When the regular season comes, they're going to be in shape. They're ready to go. But how do you take it to the next level of like what a competitive team does? How is a competitive team ready for the regular season and to go on a stretch to make a run for the Stanley Cup? Because I don't think the Canucks know. I don't think they know how. I think does Patrick Allvin and Jim Rutherford know? Yeah, they've won cups. They've probably seen what teams are like going into training camp and how a training camp needs to operate for you to be on that level. So those are type of things that you can feel like it's a little bit different, and you can absolutely make the case that things are different than they were with Jim Benning as the general manager, right? You can absolutely make a case that you feel a lot more confidence in the management group. Are Canucks fans 1,000% sold on Allvin? No. Could Allvin be talked about being fired halfway through this season? Yeah, absolutely. But I think you just feel a little bit better, at least in terms of a confidence level in your general manager than you did with Jim Benning in the past. I think you're there for sure.
Do you really think Alvin could get fired? Sorry, that was a dramatic pause. That wasn't a keep talking. That was a like I do have to think about what you said. Do you really think Alvin could get fired halfway through the year?
Yeah, I
Really? Hey,
if the season really goes off the cliff, yeah.
but
Why would ownership feel that good about it? Like at this, if the team falls apart and this team has made their moves now to a lot of people viewing this team as a competitive team for the playoffs. They could be completely wrong. We could be completely wrong. Yeah, I think that their names could be on the hot seat at some point during next season if things don't well at all.
So like is Rutherford going with him? Is that what you're saying?
Probably.
Wow. Yeah, okay. I don't know like what more you
Possible.
if you're ownership though, what more do you want? Because if you're not gonna go for a rebuild, like is that when ownership says let's rebuild? Because they just traded for Philip Hronek, so they only dug themselves deeper.
Yeah.
I don't think there's any going back. I don't think even if the season goes off the rails that we see a Rutherford and Alvin firing. I don't even know what we're gonna see if this season goes off the rails. Like, are they able to just sell and keep building? Because the other thing is, how much did ownership learn from the Jim Benning era to not buy it when you're hearing we just need a little more time, we just need a little more time, and then they just keep digging themselves a deeper hole. Like, I don't know, Chris. Like, I don't even want to talk about it. First of all, I don't think even if this season goes off the rails, right? I don't think we see a firing of the coach or the president or the general manager. I know you're out here calling for both of their jobs, but I don't think we're going to see a firing. I really, really don't think we're going to see a firing.
So here's the deal: when you're in the hot seat, what does that mean? You might get fired. Like if you're in a hot seat, is it when you say the term? I'm just asking.
Yes. Hot seat is you're feeling pressure, right? That's what it means.
Sure. So can you see Patrick Alvin being in the hot seat next year?
No, not really. Who's firing him? Is Jim Rutherford firing him?
No. I think that I just think
man.
Think if things go really bad. If things go really bad, you think the fan base is going to be all right with it? They would have lost the fan base. They probably have lost the players. I'm just saying it. I think it's possible.
We just went from reasons for optimism for next year to how could this season take the worst turn possible? I think they get one more year. I think they get one more year. Even if this season goes south, they probably get one more year from ownership.
And I'm saying I think they do too. Like I think they at least get a year, but I think that if things really fall apart, and man, we've seen it happen before. So I'm just saying, I think it's possible. Hey, we didn't bring it up off the top of the show, I don't think, but for our podcast listeners, later on in the episode, we are going to insert my conversation with Jet Wu. Jet Wu joined us, and some very interesting stuff from Jet. You guys will hear this if you're listening on the podcast. Apologies to folks on YouTube. It's just audio. I didn't really want to play it on here. It'll be available on podcasts and stuff. Really good stuff from Wu. This guy's confident about the NHL next year, man. I thought I should bring it up with you. I didn't tell you about our conversation yet, but I was a little surprised to hear, and not surprised because I think a player in his position should have this type of confidence. I guess I was surprised at the level of confidence. Like I think that Ryan Johnson has had some very good conversations with Jet about his future here, and Jet, I'll have to get the exact quote later on, or you guys will hear it in the interview. But anything aside from the NHL is like that's where he's setting the bar next year, is to play in the NHL. So that's conversation we'll get to a little bit later. We'll kind of do like a weird transition for people watching on YouTube. It might be a little awkward, but for everyone on the podcast, we'll set up the interview, get to it, clip it, and get back to it later. So that'll be nice. But I feel more confident about the positive things we've said in the last 20 minutes than the negative things. I do feel that way. Like I feel more confident in that, and that in its own feels like enough for me to get excited about the next season. Right. Like I think there's more positives than negatives for me going into next season. I think a lot of that's from the offseason moves that they've made.
Producer Aaron shot us a little message on the sidebar there. It said, this team has you guys in a mental pretzel already. And that is absolutely true. And there is a full season to come. But Chris, okay, no, we're not going to talk about this right now. One thing I want to talk about next year is like what could go wrong to the point where we're talking here, where things go off the rails, and we got to set some over-unders. That'll be a fun episode later in the month. Over-under on points. I'll start one with you just to warm you up. Over-under, Elias Pettersson, 100 points next season.
Over. Yeah, I'll take the over.
I like it. All right. I think it's gonna be over as well for sure.
Aaron's
we'll
earning some fans in here. He says way over in the chat. Producer.
Oh, yeah.
The only thing that would keep him away from that is an injury. And knock on wood. I want to get to some SHL highlights.
Oh,
yeah, because it's that point of the season, folks. It's that point of the offseason. The SHL's fired up. What do we got first here, Aaron? Let's you go ahead, throw a video up here. I know we got a couple different highlights to get to. We are going to start with Jonathan Lekaramaki's goal. So he makes his debut with Örebro, and he rips a wrist shot past first game with Örebro in the preseason, and he buries one here. So that's good. Not great on the YouTube. Apologies for that. Find it on my Twitter account. But for him to get a good start, he started on the fourth line in this game. Finished the game on the fourth line in this game, but he scored a goal. We might see what happens with him moving up the lineup. I just think it's great for him to pick up where he left off, right? He had a really good Allsvenskan playoffs. I didn't think he had the best development camp, but that's a development camp. This is him playing in a game, and this is what I take into more account about how his season's going to go than how he looked at development camp. So good for him to get a good start, and for the confidence. I think confidence is so huge with this kid next year. For me, let's see what he can do. It's a great start. Do we have the Pettersson pass as well? These videos aren't showing up too great either. Oh yeah, this one's better.
This one's good.
I don't know what happened on that last one. Elias Pettersson got an assist, primary assist here as well. Very nice pass, just finding the open guy. He made it from the right point onto the left side to a right-handed stick. Nice little tap in one-timer goal. Very good setup from Elias Pettersson, who was playing on the third pairing for Örebro in their first preseason game. But nice to see both the Canucks prospects getting on the score sheet here early on, and to do that this part of the season. Hell yeah. Love to see it. Some highlights anyways of Canucks players. It's going to start pouring in here pretty soon.
We're losing the feed there. We might have to shut it down, Aaron. We shot that on an iPod shuffle.
It's all on my Twitter account. Find it all there. So this is going to be the awkward thing for the YouTube folks, but for the podcast listeners, who there are plenty more of anyways. Actually, not last week. Last week it was pretty close. We had a lot of people actually end up viewing the whole show. Our podcast numbers were still higher, but actually starting to close the gap a little bit. For YouTube folks, apologies here, but for all the podcast listeners, let's get to our conversation now with Jet Wu. I talked to him for about 20 minutes. So the next 20 minutes here is going to be myself and Jet Wu chatting about summer expectations for next year, some stuff from last year, playoffs, developing. It's a great conversation. Love talking with Jet. He's been on the show multiple times. For the YouTube folks, I apologize. To the podcast folks, here's our conversation with Jet Wu. And now we're back on the podcast and on YouTube. This is weird, but for all the podcast listeners, you just heard Jet Wu, a great conversation there with Wu. Quads, let's get to our poll question. Take us away here.
Okay, our poll question, as always, brought to you by the great folks over at Atlas Goods. Go to atlasgds.com. Use promo code CC15 for 15% off your first order of pop rinds. These are the best fresh pork rinds straight from your microwave or air fryer. They're unlike pork rinds you've ever seen before, folks. None of that yellow bag crap. Like popcorn, they come small. You put like 1/8 of a cup in, and you've got a healthy snack, high protein snack, low carb. Go check them out. Locally owned and operated out of Surrey, British Columbia. Like I said, that is Atlas Goods, atlasgds.com, and the promo code is CC15. Our poll question today: who is most likely to play on Pius Suter's wing? Connor Garland, Vasily Podkolzin, Anthony Beauvillier, and as always, I'm angry. Chris, I am with the majority. I brought him up before. Analytics Gretzky, 57% of voters say Connor Garland, 29% say Vasily Podkolzin, 7% say Anthony Beauvillier, and 7% say they are angry. I'm with the majority, Chris. Connor Garland is my guy.
Yeah, and you know what? I found it interesting. Like, let's talk about what Connor Garland has done so well to become the analytics Gretzky of the NHL. Some would even call him the Gretzky of the NHL. But the way that Garland has success is creating offensive 5-on-5, and maybe that's the key to having Pius Suter find his next level of offense is playing with a good playmaker or a guy who just creates offensively and brings scoring chances to his line mates. I think that's what I'm looking at with Connor Garland being the option there. And it just feels like you make all of your lineups. And I did this for Canucks Army. I did 11 different Canucks ones. I feel like Connor Garland was in the top 6 once of those 11 articles. And like, I'm being like, at one point I had Tyler Myers playing forward at one point. So like we tried everything aside from putting Connor Garland in the top 6 consistently. It felt like it feels like he's the guy who's going to be on that third line playing with Pius Suter. And then to me, the other name I put up there was Vasily Podkolzin. He's got, 30% of the vote right now. I really think he's in the conversation too, because there is going to be one of Podkolzin or Höglander in the top 9. And it seems to be leaning towards Podkolzin, especially if it is a fit with Garland and Suter. Feels like Podkolzin's a little bit of a better fit than Höglander, because if you put Höglander there, there's really not a lot of size on your third line. Like you're at least getting that with Podkolzin. So I think you can see both these guys. And honestly, like predicting the day one opening night lineup from the coaching staff and what they choose, I think it is going to end up being a third line of Podkolzin, Garland, and Suter.
Yep, absolutely. And look, like I heard you hit on Halford and Ruff this morning. You talked about the line combos and stuff, and a lot's going to change, right? And hey, like let's not forget that there's also going to be at least one more move to free up some cap space. A lot of people think it's going to be a Tyler Myers trade, but something has to give with the Canucks' current salary cap situation. Okay, get us out of here. I got some stuff to take care of, but Betway first.
Sure, let's get the Betway bet of the day up here. This is a good one. Look at that. Nice job, Aaron. That was quick. I like the baseball bets, Quads. I like the Blue Jays bets. We got a couple of Quads, do you think Aaron Nola is a good pitcher? I think he had a really good kind of start to the season. He slowed down the last few games. His last 3 starts haven't been great. But I'm going to rock on with Aaron Nola and who's pitching for the Jays? Jose Barrios again? No, sorry, Gausman. Kevin Gausman and Aaron Nola. I got both of them recording 18 or more outs. So pitching 6 innings. And the bet that you're getting on that, I'm trying to pull it up here on the screen. Do we have it up here? There it is. Plus 150, $10 bet. That's going to return you $25 if Gausman and Nola both record 18 outs. Nola's last 3 starts, he has not gone over 6 innings. Before that, a very long stretch of going over 6 innings. I'm talking about 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, as I'm counting live on air. 17 of his last 18 starts before this little rough stretch. He went 6 or more innings. So I like this one. You're getting plus 150 on 2 guys who have been pretty good throughout the season and getting past that 6 innings of work for starters. And we're at that point of the year where, listen, the starters kind of get stretched out a little bit, right? I mean, we're starting to, especially teams that are in playoff battles, like if you're running away with your division, you're probably not extending all your starters. You're saving them for the playoffs a little bit. But the Phillies and the Blue Jays, I think they're kind of running their starters out a little bit long. They want to get 6 innings from each of these guys tonight. So that's why I'm going with that for my bet. Both guys over 6 innings.
Yeah. I like the bet. Aaron Nola, you asked about his year. He started really poorly, and he started to turn it around a little bit. I don't know. Like, he's a Cy Young caliber pitcher. He has been historically, but he just hasn't been that for the Phillies this year. But I don't want to talk more baseball, believe it or not. You can go find that on the Batter's Box podcast, which has 30 regular listeners now. 30 regular listeners, yeah. So go join the club. Go join the Batter's Box Club. Go subscribe to the Batter's Box, available on all your favorite podcast platforms. Okay, we will close it out there. It was a nice episode back from vacation. We'll be back next week, folks. But in the meantime, and in between time,
sorry,
you did not just. Oh yeah, you're closing it out. I'm done.
No, what I'm saying is next week, because you never give me a chance to talk ever on this show, especially today. You were antsy to talk. So I'm getting my wisdom teeth taken out tomorrow. So I think we're gonna have to push the show a little bit later into the week again, Thursday or Friday type thing, depending on how this goes. I am so worried to get my wisdom teeth taken out because you told me that you were awake for it. I thought you get knocked out completely.
You don't have to. Like, well, mine was. I don't know. I didn't really care. Like
if they give you the option to get knocked out, you turned it down. Is that what happened? Because they
said if you want to get knocked out, you have to go to a different clinic. And I was like, no, I like this clinic. I'm coming here. So they were like, okay, we're just gonna freeze you, and someone was there and they were like, you can just squeeze my arm if you're in pain. And I was like, okay. And like, you're frozen. It didn't really hurt. But the really weird thing, and if you're sensitive to any of this stuff, stop listening, because the really weird thing was when I was in the chair, I was completely frozen, right? But the dentist was like, okay, you're going to feel some pressure. I need you to push your head to the left. And I was like, okay, push my head to the left. And he's like, try and keep your head still. And then he's like wrenching because he had to break my tooth to get it out. So he's like wrenching on my face and pulling to the right. And I'm like fighting him with my neck. And it was, oh, dude, it was trippy. And I was like, what would you do if I was knocked out? Does someone like hold my head in place? And like, anyway, I just, not to scare you before your surgery, but like, it was fine. It was totally fine. And honestly, man, the worst part about that is the recovery, right? It's just the days after. That's the worst part. So you have that to look forward to, but the surgery itself is a cakewalk. You're fine. Like I said, I stayed awake for it. I just felt a weird little, and like, you're not going to feel anything that I felt. So you're fine. You're fine. You're going to be just fine. Nothing about the, excuse me. Nothing about the actual surgery hurt. Like, I was frozen. I was good. Like, it was fine, man. It felt a little weird.
Is this might be a stupid question. Because this is what I'm imagining. Is like they just have like pliers and they're pulling out the teeth in your back. Like it's got to be like some sort of like medical pliers, I'm assuming, right? Because they're pulling the tooth out, but they break it first, so I'm a little worried. But JT,
no, they had to break mine. It wasn't like,
okay.
It's not super standard that you break the teeth. But
well, I don't like teeth stuff. I've been saying for years, like, give me I want all the fake teeth now. I don't want to get old and then get fake teeth. I just want them all now. I don't want to deal with any teeth I hate teeth problems more than anything. Teeth problems, one of those two. Tooth
someone
problems.
I know, I can't remember who it was, but someone I know told me that they stayed awake for theirs, and then the surgeon had like a drill or something, and like actually drilled like the size of a cigarette, like a hole in the back of their throat. I can't remember who told me this. It was a friend of mine, but it happened to a friend of mine. But you'll be fine. You'll be good. Like, you don't have to worry. You'll be okay.
I think the guy who's muted in the chat said that actually. He's got a hole in the back of his throat.
It was Cody. That's so funny. Yes, it was Cody that told me that story. That's funny that he told it in the chat as well.
Like I said, in the chat, JT Miller, who's hanging out here with us on the podcast, just like Karen Strick in the chat here, says, not as bad as you think, Faber. I got all 4 pulled in 5 minutes. See, I'd love that.
Exactly.
And I've been
it wasn't long.
I guess the problem with wisdom teeth when they start to get bad is like they go sideways, right? Or they're side. They said mine are like straight as an arrow, up and down. So hopefully that's going to be easy. I am going to milk this. I am going to be, Quads, I'm not a whiny person. The next 5 days, I'm going to be the whiniest mother effer that you've ever seen in your life. I'm going to be like a baby sitting on the couch all day playing video games, just icing my face and whining all day. So don't talk to me. Don't look at me. Don't do anything. Don't text me. Don't call me. Because I'm just going to be whining on the other end if you try.
Are you keeping the teeth?
Sure. I don't know.
Are you? They asked me. They were like, "Do you want to keep the teeth?" And I was like, "No."
Yeah.
Okay. Why? Do you know how long a wisdom tooth is? It's like that long. It's long, man.
That long, eh?
Yeah. And Aaron said in the chat, you can see all the blood and mess get pulled out of your mouth, so that's nice too. And that was there was a lot of blood on that little bib.
Like my biggest fear. I don't want all that. I hate dental work. I hate it. I know nobody likes it, but it's one of the things that like gives me consistent anxiety. I'm always worrying about my dental health, and
not enough. You hadn't gone to the dentist for 7 years.
That's what I'm saying, because I didn't have benefits. What am I supposed to do? I was a blogger. I don't get benefits being a blogger.
Oh, shoot. We got to apply for Canucks credentials. They just sent out a reminder email. That's very nice.
I already did.
Oh, good for you. Okay, we got to get that done. Okay, we'll close it out there. For my co-host, Chris Faber, who's surgery bound.
And Jet Woo for the podcast listeners.
Of course, yes. Our thanks again to Jet Woo, for my co-host Chris Faber, and our technical producer Aaron Bordato. My name's Dave Quadrelli. Thank you so much for listening to another episode of the Canucks Conversation.
Thanks for listening to Canucks Conversation. Hit the subscribe button to never miss an episode.
How about keep it to a thank you, Jim?